Hello, Chiefs Kingdom, and welcome to the Milwaukee Chiefs cast, live from the Wolf Den. I am Chris.
And I'm Josh, and this week we're going to be recapping Week 12, where the Chiefs beat the Bucks 27-24, and our next game is going to be Week 13. Can't even talk today, which is on December 6th at 7:20 Central for Sunday Night Football versus the Broncos. And as a reminder to all Southeast Wisconsin residents, you are invited to join us for game day. Visit MKEChiefsfans.com for more details.
Today, like always, we'll be talking Chiefs, as well as going over other ongoings in the AFC and NFC, and then covering fantasy football and gambling. Today, joining us will be Scott DeMoss.
Scott's coming from deep in the heart of enemy territory. He lives in Colorado. And our sponsor, as always, is Complete Weddings and Events, your leading provider of photo, video, DJ, photo booth, lighting, and coordination services. And today I'm actually drinking 360 vodka. They're not sponsoring us, but it would be super cool if they were.
Very cool.
All right. Let's jump into the Chiefs. I think we have plenty of stuff to do. My wife told me we talked too long on this, so we need to not let this be 2 hours long, even though I think we could probably actually pull that off. Oh, yeah. So, Chris, what were your thoughts on the Chiefs game?
Well, for me, it was definitely a lot of fun to watch in the first half, even through the third quarter. I mean, I think at one point Tyreek Hill literally was on pace for 1,000 yards in that game. You know, they clearly looked like the better team than the Bucks. I actually thought the defense played well in the first half and even most of the third quarter until, you know, I think the Bucks found a favorable matchup with Rob Gronkowski, which it seems like that's kind of maybe the big weakness of the defense right now is, you know, good to really good tight ends are very difficult for the Chiefs defense to deal with. And then in the fourth quarter, you know, through a lot of offensive penalties and a couple of roughing the passers, they were able to hold on there at the end. And what I really liked on the last drive of the game is that 4-minute offense wasn't just trying to run out the clock literally. They put the ball in 15's hands, and on that third down play to ice it, he completed a pass to, you know, Tyreek Hill, which won the game. And I was really happy to see that they threw the ball instead of just trying to be conservative and run it.
So just from a devil's advocate standpoint, you talk about the Chiefs defense struggling with a good tight end. What defense doesn't?
No, that's true. And what always kills me is they'll say that, you know, whoever's defending a good tight end is a bad matchup. And I always think, well, who is? I mean, it's always, well, linebacker's too slow, a safety's, you know, too small, a cornerback is, you know, so I never know what is actually a good matchup. I know Tano Passanio is not a good matchup for a tight
end. Yes, that's correct. So, Scott, what were your thoughts on the game?
Well, I wanted to poke at that tight end situation more and maybe get you guys' thoughts or concerns, if you have any, for that deficiency and what that means as we approach the playoffs.
So, actually, I watched this game with my brother-in-law, and he's a pretty in-depth football wealth of knowledge. He coaches football through various ages, and I don't think I've ever seen him where he doesn't have a complaint about the Royals and the Chiefs. I mean, to the point where I remember the Royals won the World Series in 2015, and we're hanging out on Thanksgiving, and it was a question of whether or not Alex Smith was going to be back, or not Alex Smith, Alex Gordon was going to be back. And he goes, "What are we going to do? What a left fielder?" I'm like, I don't know. Maybe just hang out and be happy we won the World Series until maybe March. I don't know. So, but he always has a take of something that could be better. I think the team could go 19-0 and win the Super Bowl, and he would complain about, you know, some aspect of the game because that's the football coach in him. And his biggest disgust was less about the tight ends, but more that the defense gives up 3 yards every single time, which I'm having a hard time caring about that with the amount of firepower the offense has. But I would definitely say the weakness is the tight end across the middle, just mainly from the standpoint of we've got Tano Passanio doing pass coverage, and I don't even know who else we would have cover. I mean, we haven't had anybody that can cover a player like that since Derek Johnson, really. And I guess Eric Berry kind of did a good job, but those guys obviously don't grow on trees. So I really don't know what the solution is. Clemson had the guy that came out in the draft this year. I think he went to the Panthers. Who am I thinking of? He played linebacker and safety in college.
Oh, I'm not sure.
And Adams is kind of doing that for the Seahawks as well. So realistically speaking, we need to find a guy like that, or it's always going to be a problem.
Yeah, I think they try and make Dan Sorensen into that guy. It's just Dan Sorensen has his limits. But he also, as we said, he's Mr. Opportunity. So he always seems to make a play at important times.
Yeah, I was ready to write him off a couple of seasons ago when we lost the AFC Championship. I think I dubbed him Old Man Sorensen.
He just keeps coming back.
He does. And he's a wrecking man this year. I'm more worried he's going to break himself than, anything specific.
Well, maybe it's more like he's a Terminator robot. He keeps coming back. I mean, you said you wrote him off, but find one person in the world who thought Terminator 1 was better than Terminator 2. So here we go.
Yeah. You're doing what you're doing, Dan.
We're glad he came back. I didn't until we get into specific stuff about the stats. I didn't have anything else that I really took out of the game outside of. I kind of wish that we would keep the foot on the gas pedal a little bit more at some points. I think we kind of let the Bucs get back into that game by trying to not run the score up because we're not Sean Payton and the Saints, but we could probably be a little more ruthless.
I would agree with you. It would have made me comfortable, and we'll get into this when we talk gambling, obviously.
Yeah, sounds good. Sounds good. I mean, I think in the playoffs, you look at it as a situation, if you're trying to drown somebody, you don't wait until they quit struggling. You step on their head until your leg gets tired. We probably don't need to be doing that on just a random regular season game, but maybe we do if the Steelers are going to keep winning all of their games. I've kind of gotten to the point where I don't think I care if we don't get a bye because I'm not really afraid of going anywhere on the road. I'd prefer to not have to play that first weekend, but if I'm going to be completely honest about why I don't like games on that first weekend, it's when I have a really big wedding show and I can't watch.
Fair.
But anyway, so let's get into some of the play calls. I think we're probably going to be pretty in unison on our favorite play call, but Scott, what was your favorite play call of the game?
Not being afraid to not run the ball. I don't know, Tyreek's backflip. There were so many of them. Probably my favorite play call was the defensive play call on the side of the Bucs that allowed us to have Tyreek's favorite play.
Yeah. Good call. Chris, what was yours?
Outside of the one, I'll let you bring up the one that we were talking about, but, and I mentioned it earlier in my monologue was, I think it was the 3rd and 7 play with 1:15. Yeah. And again, Mahomes to Tyreek Hill was a constant theme and ultimately won the game in the end.
Yep. No, my favorite play call was the Black Pearl, which was that first series where they're on the goal line and they did the reverse to Hill, who tossed to Kelsey, who tried to throw that pass to Pat Mahomes. Even though it didn't work, that's still my favorite play to watch. And the only thing that made it better is after the game, when they asked Reed about it, his commentary was something to the effect of, son of a gun, I guess that's why they moved him to tight end in Cincinnati. I mean, man, we probably should have scored there. 24 did a nice job on that play, though. Anyways, yeah, we'll get the next one. So I really liked I also really liked the option call on 3rd and 1 later in the game where Mahomes basically clowned the entire Bucs defense. And if we're going to keep running stuff like that, this offense is just going to get even more ridiculous and put up more records, which is fine.
Yeah, he looked a bit like Tommy Frazier there, keeping the ball and running it up.
Tommy Frazier, holy throwback. We make a lot of 90s references on this, and you can't get more 90s than talking about Tommy Frazier and the last time the Nebraska Huskers were actually a really good team.
Or relevant.
That's right.
Yeah, exactly. No, I mean, Eric Crouch threw a little bit of relevance, but nothing like Tommy Frazier. I mean, that de facto national championship game, like Orange Bowl or whatever, where he was playing Danny Warfel, and it was funny watching the lead up where you had analysis where people were actually picking Florida. It's like, what games have you been watching all season?
Nebraska won every game by at least double figures. I mean, they were They blew out everybody they played that year.
Blew out everybody. So what was your guys' call for the best play? What do you think was the best play of the game? Not your favorite, the best play and best play call.
For me, it was the pass play on the 20-yard line where, I mean, that was just Pat and Tyreek communicating perfectly. And he just threw a rope right and dropped it right into Tyreek's hands. I don't know if that was just something that he saw at the line of scrimmage, or if it was a play call for that. But that was, to me, that was like, might have been the best ball I've seen Mahomes throw this year.
That was the one that jumped off the page at me because he threw that ball and I was like, oh, and then I'm like, what?
Yeah.
It got there so fast. I mean, it was nuts.
So the one I liked was the out and up, which was the really long first touchdown pass. And Mahomes threw the ball 61.6 yards in the air, which is the longest in the air point A to point B throw of his career. So I have a hard time, even though Tyreek had to kind of hold up to catch that one and then get loose. I have a hard time saying that wasn't the best play of the game, for me.
What does that rack and stack say over the last 5 years for aerial distance, I guess?
So that was his best one. That was Mahomes' best one.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm inclined to say that I have a hard time believing that there's anything better than that, but I didn't look it up.
Fair.
Yeah.
So it's about as long as you're rationally going to see in a football game. So old friend alert. I know that this is something that we do every single week. I'm going to go and just be really quick and say Ryan Suckup played in that game. It was nice seeing him again.
It's funny. I keep getting confused on where Kyra Santos and Ryan Suckup are kicking right now, but
well, let's be clear. Kyra Santos is from Brazil.
That's right.
That's fair. Yeah, I wasn't watching, I guess, the other side of the ball and the names that closely. As far as old friends, seeing them have a good week, I guess. It was nice to see Alex Smith continue his recovery and get a win. It wasn't a stellar game, but It was a win. It was good.
Yeah, we bring Alex Smith up pretty much every single week. You got a couple of really big Alex Smith fans in this room with you here.
Yeah.
And Chris, I know you have a bit to talk about on this front.
Well, so I don't know if you guys watched the game on Wednesday afternoon, and I certainly didn't. I heard some highlights as I was driving home that night, but apparently our friend Marcus Peters was actually involved toward the end of the game. So Benny Snell, the running back, if you haven't seen this, I think there's a Twitter video of it, about 10 seconds of Benny Snell essentially just pushing Marcus Peters into the ground. I mean, he throws one of the most lethal stiff arms that you've ever seen. But I think I have a quote here that I think it was a Twitter quote on here saying Snell did Peters downright dirty, stiff arming the cornerback along with his pride straight into the turf.
So on a scale of Derrick Henry versus who was it? Josh Norman or whatever?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, on a scale of 1 to that, where did Benny Snell?
Well, I guess in that case, you probably go with a 9 because I don't think I've seen anything as savage as Derrick Henry and Josh Norman.
Yeah, but I also think that Peters is more apt to let something like that get in his head than Josh Norman.
Maybe just a bit.
Yeah, his ego seems a little fragile. All right, so before we get into stats, which is where we're going to have to really control the timing on this one, if this week was a song, Chris, what would this week be?
Well, I got it. So this is going to be my first shot at Carlton Davis. So I'm dedicating the song Bad Day by Daniel Powder. It's just hard not to hear that in the back of my mind every time I saw him on the sideline with his face in his hands. But he definitely gave up over 220 yards receiving in this game, which I think is almost coming into that game was he's given up almost 800. So that's literally a quarter of the entire season for him.
And in case that doesn't sound bad enough to add some extra context, please keep in mind when American Idol first came out, that was a song they sent everybody home to. Scott, what songs are you thinking?
I like Imagine by John Lennon, because imagine if we were in the NFC, East or otherwise.
Oh, Jesus. So I have a song that I picked and then one that almost made it. So the song that I picked, and I've been thinking about this the whole time, this is more along the lines of if the week or this team or this offense was an album. I picked Walk by Pantera because it's from the album Vulgar Display of Power. The receiving yards leaders in the NFL through 12 weeks are Tyreek and Travis Kelce are 1-2. So both players come from the same team. I did read a thing on Arrowhead Pride by John Dixon. He did a really awesome 5 things that he noticed from the game column. And he referred to Pat Mahomes as number 1 with a bullet. So I almost picked Sugar We're Going Down for that one. And Mahomes definitely cocks it and pulls it all the time. He hit his 1,500 pass attempts, which is the threshold for being in the traditional record book and being actually recognized when you start to talk about accolades and accomplishments. And through his first 1,500 pass attempts, he's at 1,502, I want to say. He's first in passer rating at 110.7 cumulative. He's first in touchdown to interception ratio at 5.3 and first in pass yards per game at 307.4. So, by God.
So too early to call him the GOAT?
I would say it's too early just for the simple fact of, for me, Tom Brady's the GOAT, and he has been for a very long time. I mean, 6 titles is probably the number 3 thing that I would put out. If I'm talking about why I think Brady's awesome, playing for 2 decades solid at a pretty substantial level is probably the number 1 thing. We'll actually put the touchdown or the Super Bowl victories at number 2. But the other thing that I've always thought was very underappreciated was what he did for the team and for the cap situation and how often he was willing to renegotiate his contract. And, the thing that I really love about Mahomes right now in his contract is he wrote his contract in a very similar fashion. He's not going to be holding the cap hostage, and he tells his agent to go sit in the corner and, quit trying to maximize every single dollar because he's going to be making money for the rest of his life.
Oh, yeah. He's got to be making buku with the endorsement deals, especially with State Farm.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But
I love those commercials, too.
He is a Hall of Famer. Bill Barnwell ran a thing in the offseason where he was talking about there's not a single quarterback who's won a Super Bowl, won an MVP, and there was one other thing that he had. He's been first team All-Pro. He's like, there's not a single quarterback that isn't in the Hall of Fame that's done those 3 things. And I think the exact line was, if he decides to go be a world cornhole champion tomorrow, he's in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I mean, I think he would follow the same trajectory as like Terrell Davis, right? Relatively short career, crazy prolific,
sure.
impactful moments, right? So
sure. So I'm rooting for the 2+ decades. That's what I want more than anything, just because football's better when he's there, and I think even non-Chiefs fans would agree with that. But he is on a firm trajectory to be the GOAT. I would put the bare minimum at 3 Super Bowl victories to truly take that belt.
Yeah, I mean, he almost has a Michael Jordan type of aura about him. I mean, again, to go back to the 90s, I was glued to the NBA because of Michael Jordan. And, of course, when he retired, then I started to lose interest. I think he definitely has a lot of that going for him right now.
Oh, for sure. For sure. I mean, you could get kids to buy whatever you're selling if he's doing it. Mm-hmm. You want to be like Pat.
My daughter eats ketchup on her eggs. What more do we need to say?
So does mine. It's great.
Yep. My wife does too, yeah.
I'll probably stop my kids from eating it on a steak because that's the one place that I depart. I would have told you prior to Mahomes that anybody who does that needs to be phased out. I no longer believe that anymore because he can do whatever he wants. But we're not going to be buying meat bad enough to make that necessary.
Go ahead and marinate your ribs in ketchup if you want.
Exactly. So, any other stats that you guys want to get into?
I thought the time of possession thing, when I went back and analyzed that, as quickly as we were scoring, right? We only had one drive in that entire game over 6 minutes, but we still won time of possession. And I think that's kind of an indirect nod to just defensive pressure, especially in the first half, all the 3 and outs and things that they forced there. So I thought that was great to see. I mean, the defense continues to be this kind of unspoken of force, right? They don't get a lot of press, generally speaking. I didn't realize they're ranked as high as 7 or 8, depending on what statistic you look at. I have the misfortunes. Misfortune of listening to a lot of Denver sports radio in the car. I only do it in the mornings because Mark Schlereth is on there, and he brings a pretty fresh perspective, and he's not afraid to call John Elway out for his just horrible personnel decisions.
I really like Mark Schlereth and always have.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's his nickname? Stink, I think.
Yeah, he's got his own green chili out here, and it's pretty good. But he mentioned that, and he's like, you got to realize, like, this defense is arguably better than the one we had last year. Maybe not quite as consistent at this particular juncture as we were over the last 7 weeks of last season, but I think all the parts are there. So,
I mean, still the basic of an NFL football game is score more points than your opponent. And I don't know if we're coming to a knife fight or a gunfight, but we're bringing a semi-automatic weapon every time. So
we've got both in spades.
Exactly.
Right.
The defense just needs to keep us in games. And, you know, to this point, I guess you could knock them for that Raiders game, but that's really about it. But every once in a while, a Henry Ruggs is going to beat you, and you're not going to go 6-0 in your division every year. I don't care who you are or what you're doing. It's just it's an impossible ask to do that every single year. So I have a few more stats to throw out here. I thought we were going to be getting into all these, you know, all-time NFL record and Chiefs records when that game started, but to just kind of run down where some of these things are if we're going for them. The NFL receiving record is 336 yards from Flipper Anderson, who I believe played for the Eagles, and that was in 1989.
I think it was the Rams, actually.
Okay. Stephon Page is the Chiefs records holder, which is 309 yards. He's third all time in the NFL. Calvin Johnson, Megatron, actually had 329. As of right now, Kelsey is a handful of yards short of hitting 1,000 yards again. He was 104 short going into the game. I thought we were going to get all of these things, and then we ended up getting nothing. Harumph. That's really all you can say about that. But I did see a Mahomes graphic that came out this week, and I know I was showing this to Scott yesterday, but this came out on the NFL Now. When we're talking about career games with 400-plus pass yards, 3+ passing touchdowns, and 0 interceptions in a career since 1950, the career leader is Drew Brees. And then Tom Brady and Peyton Manning both have 5. And then Mahomes, Rodgers, and Ben Roethlisberger all have 4. And the thing that makes this seriously crazy is Mahomes has 42 career starts, which means that roughly 1 out of 10 to 11 times, 9 to 10% of the time that Mahomes walks on the field, he's going to put those kinds of numbers up, which is insane.
Yeah, I'd like to see that stat, run it back at, say, 350 yards. By no means something to scoff at, right?
Yeah, for sure. Well, but the thing that's crazy, just going down that list, Drew Brees has 9 in 284 games. Tom Brady, 297. Again, Iron Man. Peyton Manning, 266. Rodgers, 192. Roethlisberger, 228. So he's getting to these places in less than a quarter of the time that it's taking his contemporaries, because it's easy to take a stat like that and just say, well, the game has changed and this is a throwing golden age and everything where quarterbacks have this crazy advantage. Well, all of these guys are playing right now or have been here really recently, so I think we're kind of comparing apples to apples.
So I don't disagree.
Crazy stuff. All right, so AFC, what'd you take from any of the other AFC games, Chris?
Well, I guess the first thing that I took was that the Raiders either had a serious hangover from the Chiefs game or they're just not as good as maybe we thought they were, because that was pretty embarrassing what they did against the Falcons. As far as other action goes, the Browns continue to win, even though the Jaguars gave them all they can handle in that game. And then the other thing that was a bit striking was the Titans really smacking down the Colts. It looked like the Colts were actually kind of coming up as that next under the radar team, but Derrick Henry just ran wild all over them, and they ended up coming up with a big win.
Yeah, that Titans game was definitely interesting. I did not expect to see that, to at least not to that degree, and it kind of gave me shivers because it's not necessarily the best matchup for us looking down the road, right?
I mean,
I think we can outscore them. So
keep in mind, 3 months ago or 3 weeks ago, or maybe it was even 2. The Colts did the exact same thing to the Titans.
Yeah.
So one thing to maybe consider is, are either of those teams as consistent as we're giving them credit for in this situation? And then just kind of sticking in the AFC South, is there a better one-win team than the Jags?
They're in them. I mean, it's,
those guys are kind of tough as a coffin nail,
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I wonder really what's going on down there, right? I mean, it's kind of one of those things. I wouldn't be surprised if they won 9 games or 10 games next year, right?
Yeah. No, if you're talking about just statistically speaking, you can find this at the beginning of every single year. There's always a team that bests their win record by 6 to 8 games, and also one that goes down. So clearly the Cowboys are the ones going down this year. But the Jags could totally be the team that just flips it tomorrow, when we get into next season.
What did you think?
Just imagine if the Jags were in the NFC East.
They'd be winning it.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
Sorry, Scott, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I was curious of what you guys' take was on Chargers quarterback play. We get a lot of their games on TV out here for one reason or another. And so I've had the chance to watch him play quite a bit, and he's quite an athlete. I'm interested to see how that Patriots game goes. I mean, Bill Belichick's the consummate schemer and has shown a proclivity for really coming up with an idea or a concept in some of these games to just really befuddle those guys. So this will be a good test for young Justin.
Yeah, his record with rookies is uncanny.
Yeah.
Like rookie quarterbacks just don't beat him.
Yeah. But I think, I think there's a lot of talent there. I generally don't think much of Oregon quarterbacks. There's just so much gimmickry going on up there, but he seems to have, I think he's got potential.
So you're telling me that if you had a Hall of Fame ballot, Joey Harrington wouldn't be on it?
No, and I'm sorry to Marcus Mariota.
Joey. Achilles Smith.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So the 2 things that I took out of the AFC, and just a reminder, anybody who's listening to this, if you even kind of like the Broncos, the Raiders, or the Eagles, this isn't really your place to be, and it's not going to get any better right now. So starting with the Raiders, one of the most Raiders sequences that I've ever seen, I was watching that game. They're down 0-6, so a really close game. And, I mean, we know the Falcons are going to score some points. So it's late in the first quarter, and they actually get a turnover. They throw a really nice long pass down the right sideline to get inside the 5-yard line. Derek Carr clearly wants to get this play off in the first quarter, and he can't do it. The team just can't get lined up. So then you go into the second quarter, they get stuffed on the first down. They hand the ball to Jacobs on the second, but then again it's holding, so they're back to the 13-yard line. So they run it again, hands to the face. So they're back to the 23-yard line. This is so Raiders. It's not even funny, even though I thought this was really funny. And so then they possibly lose a fumble. That ended up getting overturned. They get about half their distance back on third down. They kick a field goal, and this is all against the number 32 D in the league, who anytime you have offensive players in fantasy, you're trying to stream somebody. If they're playing the Falcons, that's where you're going. So there you go. And this has to seriously be cramping Atlanta's chances of getting Trevor Lawrence. I don't know that they're very happy about this. Then I don't know how much you guys followed this Broncos situation with their quarterbacks.
I heard about it all day, and let me just preface this by saying I over time have grown to hate this team so much. I could tolerate them with Peyton Manning outside of 2 weeks a season, and that's mostly because he's Peyton Manning. He's a real class act. But
sure,
I even went so far as to text the radio station this week, right? In the aftermath of that game. I mean, just the complete lack of leadership. I mean, this franchise is a complete joke, from the ownership to the fact that you need to fire your GM, but you're caught in this like weird fan moral dilemma that he's your golden child. You can't release him. You've got a lawyer on the governing body of the organization right now. She has no football experience is really my point, right? And then the quarterback situation, right? Like, I have a 5-year-old. My kids both go to school half a day, 5 days a week. They manage to keep the masks on. Like, dude, come on. And then the social media posts to come out and kind of like say, oh, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, we'll take accountability. He says we, even though he's the leader of the team. Yeah. And then to have your mom pile on too to your defense.
That was great. That was great. His mom.
Yeah, it's awful. I got to read you this text though. I mean, it's just basically fire Drew Luck. The guy is a moron. His complete lack of leadership.
He went to high school with Chris, by the way.
Well, he went to the same high school I did. Yeah.
And his lack of leadership mirrors everything that we see from this franchise in general. He really, like, if I'm in charge, like, this guy's done. He's not even good, and then to do this. And then they can be losing, like, I think he did it in the Chiefs game, the last game. Throws some pass touchdown and does that silly Fortnite dance.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, did you look at the scoreboard?
Yeah.
I mean, if you're into video games, put on, like, those VR goggles and go, read the defense or whatever.
Yeah.
But
I think even Johnny Manziel has better sense than that. I mean, come on.
I have no respect for that guy. He just, I don't know. He's just this much better in terms of his professionalism than Paxton Lynch, right?
Yeah. Wow. Ouch. I had some other stuff I was going to say, but I don't know I have anything better than that. But if you look, the NFL seems like they're pretty done messing around with COVID. They're starting to take away draft picks and stuff like that. And I'm with you. I just don't understand how you have such horrible judgment. It's like you've taken the job that, everybody that played football as a kid dreamed of having. You're an NFL starting quarterback and you can't even get through that.
And to not be aware of the pervasiveness of NFL security. I mean, there's like multiple cameras in every room. Like, did you not notice that over the last 2 years? I mean,
exactly. No, this current Elway regime kind of, reminds me a little bit of when Pioli was in charge and Todd Haley's sitting there going like, oh, I feel like my room was tapped. Well, it probably was.
Yeah. Oh, it absolutely was.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, good stuff. For NFC, I just had, one quick game that I actually watched was Joey Sly, blowing it against the Vikings. I mean, that was a pretty fascinating end of a game, just watching him go back and forth. I mean, the Panthers gave up the lead with under a minute. They got a shot, and, Joey Sly kicked a 54-yard field goal attempt. And, I mean, you would think that he was trying to kick in Soldier Field in October the way that ball went. But believe it or not, that was actually a dome in Minneapolis that was climate controlled.
Yeah. For me, I got the San Francisco 49ers beating the Rams. They're kind of sneaking back into the discussion for the playoffs, and given how watered down the NFC is, I got a lot of respect for Kyle Shanahan. I think he's an incredible coach, and the fact that he's still has that team around 500, given all the injuries they've had this year. Nick Bosa, and Garoppolo, Mostert, and on and on and on, and they're right there at 5 and 6.
Yeah. Yeah. The other NFC thing that I noticed, we kind of talked about Carson Wentz, last week and really every week, but This week was a little weird. I feel like Carson Wentz is in transition, and I'm not really sure if he or the Eagles know it specifically, but he is. We talked a little bit about Jalen Hurts last week, and pretty much, my thought process on that was he must not be good if he's not even threatening to take some of this. But no more than after we get done releasing the last episode, Chris sends me a text and says that Jalen Hurts got some first team reps. And, so my whole thing, I don't know if you guys have watched Hamilton abusively the way that I have, but there's a whole thing where King George comes out, and after the Revolutionary War is over, he has this whole question, what comes next? And so to the Eagles fans, I ask you, what comes next? Wentz is benched. Do you know how hard it is to stand behind that line? It's so awful and so bad. Do you just throw away everything you had? and I think Wentz can possibly be on a new team as early as next year if they figure out a way to get him out of there. And really the money is going to be the biggest thing stopping that. But
it's like a $60 million hit next year, I think.
Yeah, which means you got to get him traded and get somebody to take him. And so I have 4 potential scenarios where I think that he could go and be a starter. First of all, can you even rule out a way that somehow Belichick and Josh McDaniels come up with some witchcraft to get him in to play on their team?
Yeah, I mean, it must be considered.
Exactly. And then, you mentioned how much of a bang-up job Kyle Shanahan's doing. What if they figure out a way to, clear a bunch of cap space in San Francisco, because clearly they can make anything happen with what they have, and get him out there and have Kyle Shanahan get him right. We talked about the Jags being a really good one-win team. So let's just say those guys say, F it, it's just money. They're kind of swimming in cap space.
I think he ends up at the Colts.
See, and I was going to say that too. I didn't have them on my list, but Frank Reich, reunion, and the Colts have done nothing but sit there and stockpile cap space.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think Rivers is on a 1-year deal, right? So
correct. And I don't see any reason why you would bring him back if you're the Colts. I mean, part of the reason that team's inconsistent is that you can't figure out a way to get a ball to T.Y. Hilton, and there you go. But what more? The Broncos, they can't be any worse than what they have right now. But then I also threw together, 3 backup scenarios where he goes to try and resurrect his career as a backup. And those 3 teams would be, from my perspective, I think the Saints, are looking at doing that type of thing. I think they'd walk from Jameis Winston today if you would let them.
And, you're saying Taysom Hill's in the quarterback of the future for the Saints?
I think they're realizing Taysom Hill's a gadget player that keeps stuff going, and he's a great change of pace. And, I mean, he hasn't come in and done Teddy Bridgewater, but they haven't lost games that he's played. And, I mean, even though they didn't play against a quarterback. Right. But I could see Gruden figuring out a way to get him as a backup, and then the first time that he gets pissed off at Derek Carr, which might be week 1. There you go. And then let's just throw this weird wild card out. Let's say they cut him and decide to just eat the cap space, and they fire Doug Peterson and just fly the plane into the mountain in Philly and just hit the reset button. Is there a better place to resurrect your career than on Andy Reid? Much.
I mean, if you're okay with practically no playing time, then come on over.
Yeah, exactly. But you got to practice with Andy Reid. I also just really think that if you want to look at a place where he would be a really good fit, he's not moving to a division, but really any of the other teams in the NFC East. Said maybe Alex Smith holding down that Washington job, he'd be a good fit in any of those 3.
That's so true. I don't think he's done though. I personally don't.
No.
I don't either. I don't either.
Mm-hmm.
I don't either. I think that he's just something's gotten stagnant, and he's taking accountability. He's saying all the right things. He doesn't seem to have his confidence completely shaken. I have no idea what's going on. It's just weird.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely something there. The guy would have won the MVP had he not torn his knee up against the Rams.
Exactly.
Making a hero play, right? I mean,
Exactly. Anything else about actual games before we get into fantasy and gambling?
No, I don't think so.
Nope. Not
All
my
right.
end.
Chris, who are your boom, bust, and okayest fantasy players?
Right. Well, my boom and bust is actually the same player. I'll explain why. So my boom is actually going to be Will Fuller.
Okay.
He had himself quite a game.
Yep, he sure
I
did.
know because I kept him on my bench in one of my teams.
Yep.
But yeah, 6 catches, 172 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Great job. And then what does he do? He follows it up a few days later, getting busted for PEDs, and now he's suspended for the rest of the year.
Yep. So he's definitely going to be playing somewhere else. And I like anytime somebody gets busted for PEDs, it's always the same story. Like, oh, I had something and it had a substance that it shouldn't have, and I didn't know that. And I'm like, I don't think that's true.
Yeah. Or they throw the trainer under the bus or something like that. It's
I mean, if I'm hiring a trainer, it's something I might put in his contract, just kind of for future protection.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I would make one of the big things. It's like, okay, everybody that has any kind of, interaction with the player's health and safety, it's like these guys do not fail a drug test. So, yeah. and that goes for anything they might be putting in their body. So if these guys like to smoke a bit, you need to make sure they know when they need to be not doing that. You need to be managing how much water they need to be drinking and all of that stuff, and looking at any medication they take.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of those, like, you are cut and you forfeit your entire guaranteed money if you take something that our people don't review. It's just crazy. I don't understand that either. So my boom, I wrote down Derrick Henry because he had 178 yards, 3 touchdowns, 40 points in PPR, 2.5 times his projection. But check that, Tyreek Hill did all of that in the first quarter. So Tyreek Hill is the boom. The bust.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of places where I think Tyreek Hill set a lot of records in fantasy leagues.
For sure.
Yeah.
He was 50 some odd points. My bust is Derek Carr. I don't think there could be anything better than that. I saw him actually be negative points in a Yahoo league. He was worth like 1 in the ESPN league that I play in. But I think of the Will Ferrell, Alex Trebek Celebrity Jeopardy things. He's like, and thanks to you people, money will actually be taken away from charity, which is what happened. And I actually had a guy who was playing in one of my leagues who started Derek Carr, and I beat him by 3 points. So the rest of his team performed pretty well, and that eliminated him mathematically from the playoffs. So he got 100% Derek Carr. My most okayest player is the entire Broncos quarterback room. None of them played, and most rosters got relatively close to the same amount of production if they would have started Drew Lock.
Oh, that's a train wreck. My God. I wouldn't be much better this week either.
All right, Chris.
My most okayest player is going to be Russell Wilson, actually. He against Carson Wentz and crew, he only had 230 yards, 1 TD, and then 6 rushes for 12 yards. So he was very pedestrian for a guy who's been filling the stat sheet all year.
Yeah, for sure.
For boom, I go with Antonio Gibson. That was a pretty good show he put on.
Oh, for sure.
His projections. And then bust for me was Mike Sanders. I mean, he's been steady Eddie, nothing glorious. And I figured in a kind of grinded out, yucky sort of game versus the Seahawks, he would have done a little more, but it was meager at best.
So Scott, we kind of brought you on here for 2 reasons. One, you live in enemy territory, so before this Broncos game, we're good to go. I think from a game perspective or prediction, we all think they're going to beat the brakes off the Broncos, and there's not really a whole lot of stuff to talk about beyond that. But we also wanted to hear about how your gambling situation took place in the Bucs game.
Well, yeah, I'll start by saying I don't have a gambling problem.
Well, if you do, please make sure you call that 800 number that they give you in Vegas and the back of lottery tickets and stuff like that. We're here to help if you need anything. I will
go on record as saying I actually voted against the legislation that legalized sports gambling here. It was a classic, not to go on a political rant, but basically the gambling authorities and associations and casinos here buddied up or came up with this great idea. We'll get behind a conservation issue. And so water's a big deal out here in the West. You may have heard it before, right? Mm-hmm. Whiskey's for drinking, water's for fighting. So they're like, hey, we'll give, 10% of all after-tax profits or whatever it was to fund this new Colorado water plan. First of all, I'm not a big fan of building dams, but in any case, when you read the fine print of this legislation, there's going to be like, I don't know, $280 million in revenue projected. And they allocated only $100,000 to fund additional social and welfare programs related to people with gambling problems. I mean, it's enough to maybe hire one full-time person. And so as fun as it is, hey, there's downsides. So all that being said, as I was telling you guys, that Chiefs game was the fourth leg in a 4-team parlay. I don't usually go that wide and deep, but I had the week off work to kind of look at the numbers and thought, hey, what the heck? And I mean, I think I was drunk in the second quarter. I'm like, I picked 2 favorites and 2 underdogs in this.
Lord knows I was.
Shout out to if you want to become a sponsor, just give Josh a call.
Yeah, 360 Vodka, world champions.
So, I'm sending texts to my dad. I'm like, oh, what a glorious payday. And he's like, because he bet on the Bucks, because he's a huge Tom Brady fanboy. And I'm like, oh, it looks like we got this one locked up and we're still in the first quarter. And then, for various reasons, we went into kind of conservative mode. And like I was telling you, Josh, I never felt like we were going to lose the game.
Sure.
When all those penalty flags started flying, I was kind of like, ugh, I could see some stupid scenario. They got enough speed on the other side of the ball, right? That, Tom Brady throws it up and, stranger things have happened, right?
Yeah.
So it was a little frustrating, though. What I did do, though, is I bought 2 extra points to spread across those 4 games. So I did actually get paid, but it diminished the payout quite a bit. So that's now the 3rd week in a row the Chiefs have failed to cover. I definitely got bit by the Carolina game.
Oh, yeah. That
was frustrating.
Yep. Yeah, at the risk of getting a little too political, I could solve Colorado's water situation here really quickly. Quit sending any water to California and tell those people to figure it out. That state's stupid, and geographically, people shouldn't be living there.
I kind of have the same sentiments after having driven through Fresno for the first time,
See, Fresno's not the one that alarmed me. I drove through Napa County. And you just see desert. Because that's what that state is. It's a desert. Yeah. And this is where my wife's family's from. So we go out there a pretty substantial amount of time. But drive through Napa and then you see nothing. And then just this pristine wine valley, just all the grapes and vines and everything like that. And I like wine as much as the next guy, probably more actually. I'm a big, massive wine fan, but it's kind of irresponsible the amount of, grapes they grow out there. It's kind of like seeing, any yard in Vegas that doesn't have xeriscaping or, any golf course in Arizona that doesn't have a disproportionate amount of sand traps. It's offensive,
Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah, topic for another podcast, perhaps.
Yeah, probably not one about football. Okay, so the last thing that we do before we give our parting shots, we have a category called Player That Played Well Enough for an XFL Assignment. So I'm going to go ahead and throw out that it's Carlton Davis, and I'm going to let Chris have the floor and say why.
I don't think it takes a whole lot of explanation, but I did actually go and look at his stat sheet just to humor myself quite a bit. So let me get it here real quick. So Carlton Davis was targeted 14 times in the game. He gave up 11 completions for 222 yards, which was over 20 yards of completion and almost 16 yards a target. So, that was
got to be some kind of record.
It might be, but that poor, part of me started to feel really bad for him because I had no idea what Todd Bowles was thinking, leaving him one-on-one with Tyreek Hill at the field. But yeah, he was definitely my choice too for the guy who was best suited for the XFL this past weekend.
Yeah, in all reality, I might change my vote to Todd Bowles. It's like, why don't you go and scheme for those guys? So, Scott, who would you demote to the XFL?
Well, I don't know. Is it a demotion or a promotion? We send Kendall Hinton down from the Broncos. He can become a starting QB in the XFL.
Yeah. No, I mean, as much as I rag on the Broncos, I've got nothing bad to say about Kendall Hinton. The dude stepped up. He was a pro. It just, kudos to him,
I 100% agree. And, there was a lot of talk on the radio about, competitive advantage and this being dangerous and blah, 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 blah. And I just kind of sum it up as we've hammered this one home. But when your franchise is irrelevant, you're not going to get any special accommodations from the NFL, right?
Well, exactly. And that was, my thought process as well on that. It's like your team is irrelevant. That's got to be the toughest pill for a Bronco fan to swallow. You got to watch the Steelers Ravens have their game moved 3 times in 1 week. But the NFL just simply said, one, you guys were being a bunch of jackasses and you deserve nothing more than this. And I think that it was a punitive situation there. But, clearly your team, your fans, and your general manager have no sway with the NFL.
I completely agree. The other guy I would send down from the Broncos is KJ Hamler. I mean, that guy, got so much hype in the preseason and training camp or whatever we had of training camp. That guy didn't do squat. He rushed twice for a -8 yards last week. It's like,
yep.
He's trying to. The running joke here, especially promoted by Mark Schlereth, is that, we're gonna outspeed the Chiefs.
Sure. Yeah. It's gonna work out great.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, Scott, as our guest, you get the first crack at parting shots. So what's the last thing you want to throw out here?
Oh man, I like the consistency. Keep doing what we're gonna do. I don't know. I see probably like a 38-13 kind of game in the future this weekend. Hopefully it's more. I think good. Pretty clearly how I feel about these guys. So
sounds good.
We've got, is it Steelers Bills this weekend or is that next weekend?
I believe that's this weekend.
Yeah, Steelers had the Washington football team, which I'll go on the ledge, and I'm going to call that upset right now.
Sweet. I would love nothing more than to see the Washington team go 9-7 and Alex Smith actually take a playoff spot that nobody complains about. Chris, what's your parting shot?
Well, I'm actually going to expound upon it a bit more on Kendall Hinton. So, this guy completely warriored up. And he is the first player, first non-quarterback to play significant snaps since 1965. Tom Matz for the Indianapolis Colts was, I guess, thrusted into the quarterback position. But, this kid was signed as an undrafted free agent back in April and actually cut in September while he was on the practice squad, then re-signed at the beginning of the month. So it's not like they just re-signed the kid to play quarterback. He actually was on the team for a few weeks, but kudos to him for stepping in there and taking one for the team. But, he had some quarterback experience at Wake Forest, but really what ultimately I think got him to the NFL was the fact that his senior year, where he thought about transferring, he stayed on with Wake Forest as a wide receiver and had 73 catches for 1,000 yards.
Yeah.
So he's a football player for sure.
Oh, for sure. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, so my parting shot this week, I don't know how much college football you guys track, but Vanderbilt actually had a female kicker play, and her name is Sarah Fuller. She was the first female to participate in a Power 5 conference football game, which is going to be the SEC, Pac-12, ACC, Big 12, Big 10. And she went in and actually executed a squib kick, which was the play that broke the football glass ceiling for females. Apparently that wasn't squib enough for some people. There was a little bit of flack, around social media and stuff about how, somebody playing intramural football could have made that kick. From what I saw, she went in and made the play that she was asked to, but she's also the starting goalkeeper for the Vanderbilt women's soccer team, which is quite good. And so she followed it up later that week, as a 2-sport athlete, which is crazy. and she kicked the ball in a match across the field, and we're talking something like 70-ish yards, and the ball landed in the penalty area in front of her forward, and off of one bounce, this lady put it in for a goal. So it was plenty of leg, plenty of aim, all of those things. So cheers to Sarah, who might even be the starting kicker today. I haven't even, checked out what the Vanderbilt Georgia game is.
She's supposed to be, yeah.
But she was the top of the depth chart. And just to note, she's not the first female to play college football. She's actually the third one in Division I behind Katie Haneda, who kicked for New Mexico for a long time. She was their kicker. And April Gross at Kent State actually kicked after her. So yeah, cheers to the girls possibly playing football. And the only note that I was going to end with, I saw earlier this week that Dan Le Batard's leaving ESPN, and I think that what we're doing is some pretty random just talking, and we're more Dan Le Batard-esque than I think we're not. So I'm excited to see what he and Stu Gotts and the rest of the guys have coming up next, and I hope Poppy's involved, and we're going to see how many non-competes are violated if they try to get Bomani Jones and Mina Kimes to come on and be guests and stuff. But anyway, I don't know that I'd go against Disney's contract lawyers. But anything else, guys?
No. Well, actually, just one quick thing. I did want to actually give a shout out to Brashad Breeland. He's actually quietly having a really good year. I won't go too much into the stats, but I mean, he's actually statistically one of the best cornerbacks in the NFL right now, and he had a great game on Sunday. So
yeah,
shout out to him.
Keep that going.
Just one last thing. At what point is it after next week or the week after, do we start going through the choose your own adventure playoff scenarios planning, so that we can figure out which secondary jerseys to buy and root for teams down the home stretch to win or lose, right?
Sure. Well, I buy the jersey for whoever's playing Pittsburgh. That's your answer. Start that.
I'll get my Alex Smith jersey right now then.
Have you done the analysis yet? I mean, I know the tiebreakers are going to go deep if they end up with the same record. So I think Buffalo would be a favorable loss for us, right?
Yeah,
Correct.
If they lose to Washington, it actually doesn't help the Chiefs because it's not a conference loss.
Yeah, and the only conference game they have left is the one against Cleveland, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't see them losing that.
So.
Yeah, I don't see them losing that at all. They've beaten Baltimore twice. Pretty sure they've beaten Cincinnati twice. But so that Cleveland game is kind of looming. The best case scenario is they lose two of them. So Washington and Buffalo can be those two.
I'd love to.
I like it.
That.
Sounds good. All right. Well, thanks again, Scott. We'll have you back on here. This is a blast.
Yeah. No, I really appreciate you having us. This
absolutely.
Is great. I'd love to be back.
Cool. Rock and roll. All right. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in. And once again, thanks to our naming sponsor. We're presented by Complete Weddings and Events, your leading provider of photo, video, DJ, photo booth, lighting, and coordination services. And go Chiefs.
Chiefs.